Welcome to Zoe Stories. My mom found my makeup and dresses. Alex had always been careful. In his small, close-knit town, where news traveled fast and gossip was a favorite pastime, keeping any secret was difficult. But his secret, hidden under his bed in a weathered cardboard box, felt like a different kind of burden altogether, one that he was both terrified and exhilarated by. Beneath the box's lid were pieces of a life Alex had been too scared to share, even with himself. A floral dress, a pair of heels, some carefully selected makeup, and a deep desire to understand what it all meant. It hadn't started out as something serious, just a curious swipe of lipstick borrowed from his mom's dresser, or an old skirt bought at a thrift store under the guise of a school play costume. But as time passed, Alex found himself drawn more and more into that private world. When he wore the clothes, when he looked in the mirror, he didn't see the uncertain boy everyone else saw. Instead, he saw someone he felt comfortable being, someone real. But that comfort came with fear too. Fear of what it meant, fear of being found out, fear of disappointing his mom, the only family he had left. His mother, Susan, was kind and loving, but also traditional in her values. Raised in the same small town where Alex now found himself trapped, she adhered to the norms that the town prescribed. To Alex, her support was far from guaranteed. So for now, his secret remained hidden, or so he thought. The turning point came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Alex had come home from school as usual, the weight of another exhausting day dragging his steps. He had gotten used to pretending to be like the other boys, pretending not to care about the harshness of teenage life, pretending to fit in. It was draining, but it was necessary. However, the moment he stepped into the house, something felt wrong. The air smelled like fresh laundry, a sure sign his mom had been cleaning, and his heart sank with a sense of dread. As he reached the top of the stairs and turned into his bedroom, the sight that greeted him made his stomach drop. His carefully guarded secret had been pulled out into the open, exposed. Dresses, skirts, makeup, everything he'd hidden so carefully, was now laid out on his bed like a silent accusation. And there, standing by the window, holding one of his favorite sundresses, was his mom. "Mom, Alex stammered, his voice barely more than a whisper as a flood of panic gripped him. She turned slowly, her expression unreadable, but it wasn't anger or disgust that he saw in her eyes. It was curiosity, maybe even concern. She held up the dress, looking at him with a soft, questioning gaze. "I wasn't looking for anything," she said quietly. "I was just cleaning and I found these. Alex, is this something you want to talk about?" His mind raced with excuses, but none of them felt right. The words he had rehearsed in his head for years, excuses, explanations, denials, they all vanished. There was nothing left to hide behind. His entire world was laid bare on that bed, and the weight of it all pressed down on him like never before. He was certain this was the moment his mom would see him differently, that everything would change. But instead of pressing him, she took a step closer and held out the dress. "Why don't you try it on for me?" she asked, her voice steady, almost kind. Alex blinked, his throat tight with confusion. "What?" She smiled softly, a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. "I just want to understand. If this is something that makes you happy, I'd like to see it. Please, Alex, try it on." His hands trembled as he took the dress from her, a million thoughts and fears crashing into each other in his mind. With heavy steps, he made his way to the bathroom, closing the door behind him as if that small barrier would protect him from the world outside. Inside, his reflection stared back at him from the mirror. A nervous, uncertain boy with a heart full of confusion. But when he slipped into the dress, that familiar sense of calm returned. The soft fabric brushed against his skin, and for a moment, the chaos in his mind quieted. This was who he was, even if he didn't fully understand it yet. With a deep breath, Alex opened the door and stepped out. His mom was waiting patiently, sitting on the edge of the bed. When she looked up and saw him, her eyes widened, not in shock, but in awe. "You look beautiful," she said softly, her voice full of warmth. Hearing that word, beautiful, made something inside Alex unravel. For so long, he had carried the weight of his secret alone, unsure if anyone could ever understand. But in that moment, standing there in front of his mom, something shifted. It wasn't just the dress. It was the acceptance in her eyes, the understanding that he had longed for, but never thought he'd receive. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her tone full of tenderness as she stood and brushed a strand of hair from his face. "I didn't know how," Alex admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't even know if I understood it myself." She smiled and sat down beside him on the bed, patting the space next to her. "You don't have to know everything right now, but we can figure it out together." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, the awkwardness slowly fading as they opened up to each other. His mom asked questions, not out of judgment, but out of a desire to understand. She even helped him try on more of the clothes he had hidden away, offering small bits of advice and support as they went through each piece. When they reached the makeup, she laughed softly, admitting she hadn't worn much herself in years, but she was willing to learn for him. For the first time, Alex didn't feel the need to hide. He didn't feel like he had to pretend. And the more they talked, the more he realized that this wasn't just about the clothes or the makeup, it was about who he was and the journey he was on to figure that out. As the weeks passed, things began to change, both in subtle and profound ways. Alex no longer felt the need to hide his collection of clothes or his growing interest in exploring his feminine side. His mom became his biggest supporter, encouraging him to experiment with different styles and even venturing out on shopping trips together. What had once been a secret burden now became a shared experience, a way for Alex to discover more about himself with someone he trusted by his side. The transformation was slow, but steady. At first, it was just at home, wearing dresses, learning how to apply makeup, exploring his new sense of identity in a safe, supportive environment. But as his confidence grew, so did his desire to take that step beyond the walls of his home. His mom was there every step of the way, offering encouragement, but never pushing him beyond what he was ready for. Together, they took small steps, first a walk around the block, then a trip to the store. Each time, Alex's nerves would spike, but the exhilaration of being out in the world as his true self was intoxicating. It wasn't always easy. There were stares, whispered comments, and moments of doubt, but knowing his mom was by his side made all the difference. As time went on, Alex's outward appearance began to change. He started growing out his hair, taking better care of his skin, and dressing more femininely even at school, albeit subtly at first. But the real transformation was internal. He no longer felt like he was playing a part or hiding behind a mask. He was becoming more comfortable in his own skin, more confident in who he was. One day, after months of self-discovery and gradual change, Alex stood in front of the mirror, looking at himself in a way he never had before. He was wearing a simple but elegant dress. His makeup was done just right, and his long hair framed his face perfectly. But it wasn't the clothes or the makeup that made him feel complete. It was the realization that he was finally living as his true self, without fear or shame. The journey wasn't over, far from it. There were still challenges ahead, still moments of doubt and fear. But for the first time in his life, Alex wasn't walking that path alone. His mom's support had given him the strength to embrace who he was, to step out into the world not as someone he thought he should be, but as someone he truly was. As Alex looked at his reflection in the mirror that evening, he smiled. His mom's words from that first day echoed in his mind. "You don't have to have all the answers right now." And maybe he didn't. But with each step forward, with each new experience, he was learning more about himself. And with his mom by his side, he knew he had the love and support he needed to continue that journey, one step at a time. The real transformation, he realized, wasn't just in how he looked, it was in how he felt. For the first time, Alex felt free. Free to be himself. Free to explore. And free to embrace the beautiful, complex person he was becoming. Thank you for joining us on another captivating journey through Zoe's stories. Remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale. Until next time, keep exploring, keep imagining, and keep believing in the magic of storytelling. See you in the next chapter.